Bless you guys. Well, kids, you can go out with David. Have fun out there. Be super blessed. Make a bunch of noise. Have a lot of fun. How is everyone today? How are we going? Going good? That's great. That's great. I was going to start off this morning with a joke, but I haven't got one. So, anyone got a joke? I just need one joke to start the message off today. Jason, alright, Jason's had his hand up first. What's your...
His name's Carl.
We love you, Cole. We love you, mate. Stephen.
What's got no eyes, no arms,
No eyes, no arms, and one leg.
That's a riddle, that's not a joke.
That's like a joke.
That's not a joke.
I give
A
it.
leg!
Well, there could be a body there as well. Anyway, alright. Bless you guys. Wow.
Even makes sense.
You idiot!
Oh man, this is crazy. Crazy church.
He's not eating food at the moment.
Yeah.
Pete, have you got a joke? You always got a joke. You got his joke though, didn't you? Yeah. Alright. Alright. If you've got a Bible, you can turn to some part in it. All scriptures God breathed and useful for correcting, teaching, rebuking. But Colossians 1. Colossians chapter 1, we're going to go there in a second. We're talking today about grace, sacrifice, and revival. Kind of three topics. You could spend a whole series on each one of those. But I wanted to kind of join the dots between these three subjects: grace, sacrifice, and revival. And it's, I don't know, I mean, you probably know it's pretty close to my heart that revival is what I feel like I'm born for. Revival is actually really a massive thing on my heart. I really love the idea of revival. And so revival really is, for a quick definition of revival, is God doing something extraordinary than he normally does, and he's just like, so people, imagine this, I mean, this is kind of an idea of revival. People start driving through the roundabout near Macca's, and all of a sudden, they feel the presence of God. And they go, wow, what is that? Revival is people walking into church and getting healed before anybody prays for them. You know, revival is where God's Spirit is so active amongst the church and the community that there's 500 people outside of every church waiting to get in. And there is historical precedent for that, and this has happened time and time again throughout history. And this is what I'm praying for Swansea. And it burns on my heart every time I pray. There's something that I'm thinking about. I'm like, revival. Whether it's at the back of my mind or the forefront of my mind, I'm thinking about revival. And that vision is there all the time for me. Now, if you want to, I have made some notes for the message on our website. So if you go to our website and you go to message notes, they are there. And there's some videos too, which I'm not going to show, but you can have a look at them later. There's some videos of revival in Toronto, not the revival that you went to, Janet, but
not Toronto across the line.
Yeah, Toronto across the world. And there's that. There's Reinhard Bonnke preaching to millions of people. And in that video, it's incredible. Like this video of him in Nigeria, there is literally he goes from place to place to place. You cannot see the end. Or you can see these like faint little lights in the background, which are these massive floodlights. You can just see these faint. That's where people are still there, you know. And at some meetings, 2.5 million people were saved in one night. 2.5 million. So it's regularly 1 million. But it's mind-boggling to think that that's how hungry people can get, and God's Spirit can move so powerfully, but stuff like that can happen. So revival's on my heart. 100-year vision I've got on my heart. I don't share it very often; it's very personal, but it's where I see my great-grandchildren who are leaders in the community, who are faith-filled, they're faithful, and they are just, they're preaching away, and I see multitudes of people just being blessed by my family, but also too that I see Swansea like as a creative hub, and I've shared that with a couple of people. It's this hub. It's like Byron Bay, but without the the marijuana cookies. All right, it's kind of like that. Does that kind of make sense? They're here too. I know that, but what I'm trying to say is it's not what it is now. And you've got to have this vision in your mind, okay, this is what I want to see, and you keep working towards it, even if it's 100 years from now. And there's 100 years from now, I will not get to see that vision. If it takes 100 years, I won't get to see it. I'm still working towards it. And my prayer life involves that. When I storm up and down in my little studio by myself sometimes at 6 in the morning, just rightio, Lord, this is what we want to see happen, and you start declaring hope, and you start declaring peace, and you start saying, hey, this is going to be Swansea's going to be a place that is this. We changed in one of our Bible studies. We changed the name of a particular residence, which is commonly known. It's not a great name for the place, and you might have heard, but I'm not even going to talk about it. Well, we changed it from that to Grace River. No, Grace, not Hope. What is it we changed it to?
The river.
The River. River of Life. River of Life. And then we just shortened it for the river. So we go past that place. We drive past and go, it's the River of Life. That's what God intended that place to be. A river of life. So we speak life, we speak hope. And it doesn't always happen straight away, but you just keep speaking hope and keep speaking life. And that's what revival is. Now, so I want to join the... Is that all right? Are we still on board at the moment? All right, nobody's... I haven't lost anyone yet? Good. All right. Excellent. Grace, sacrifice, revival. Now, grace is amazing. I mean, obviously, it's why the song's there. Grace is incredible. I mean, to think that the creator of the universe, just try and think about this for a second. The creator of the universe, and I don't know if you've seen those Louis Giglio videos of the world and the universe and how incredible it is. The creator of that steps into his creation and submits his life. Chooses to feel everything that we feel. Physical pain, emotional pain, everything. He chooses to do that, to die for us. So that we could be saved. That's what grace is. Isn't that amazing? It's incredible. It's beautiful. It's scandalous. Remember Joseph? Not Joseph, the stepdad of Jesus, but Joseph, the one that got thrown into the pit and he had beautiful clothes, right? Rainbow clothes of some sort. It's not what I want to wear, but anyway, it's his choice. And so his dad's about to die. So Jacob, got renamed Israel. His dad's about to die, and he says, "Bring me your boys. Bring me your boys." To Joseph, he says, "Bring me your boys." And so he musters up his strength, and his boys are there, and he puts Manasseh on his right-hand side, and he puts Ephraim on the left-hand side. So Manasseh and Ephraim are Joseph's boys, right? The first two boys. And Jacob says, bring him here. I want to bless him. And so back then it was custom to bless the eldest son with twice as much as kind of the younger son, right? We don't do that anymore. I like that idea, but because I'm the youngest son in my family. I want my equal share of my inheritance. And so he's there, and he's there about to bless him, and then he does this. He crosses his arms. And Joseph's like, no, you got it wrong, Dad, slow down, it's not what it is. Dad, here's Manasseh over here. He's on your right-hand side, you don't have to cross your arms. And Jacob's like, I know, it's cool, I got this, Jacob, I know. And so he deliberately crosses over his arms, and he gives the firstborn blessing to Ephraim, who is the secondborn. And he gives the secondborn blessing to... It's still a blessing. It's still a great blessing. But he crosses his arms and gives what was deserved, what Manasseh really deserved, what Ephraim got, and Ephraim deserved what Manasseh got, right? And it's exactly what God did. God crossed his arms when Jesus outstretched his arms. God crossed his arms and said, I'm going to bless you in the way that Jesus should be blessed. Does that make sense? And I'm going to punish Jesus the way that you should be punished. And so we see this beautiful, it's scandalous. It's not just beautiful and amazing, it's actually scandalous. Jesus didn't deserve it, and yet he got it. Does that kind of make sense? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And every time I think about it, it's just like, wow, why would he do that? Why would he do that for us? But he did. And it's amazing, and it's grace. And we did nothing. Romans 5:8 says, whilst we were still sinners, he died for us. In other words, it's not like I said to God, hey God, I'm stuffed up in my life, and I really need you. He's like, awesome, I'm going to die for you now. Fantastic, I can fix this situation up for you. No, he did it the other way around. He died for us, and then he wanted us to come to him. He did it first. Whilst we were still sinners, he died for us. Christ died for us, and he did it. He planned it before he even said, let there be light. Ephesians 1 verse 4 says that before the creation of the world, he planned it. He planned it all. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. And this is grace that not only would we see, and this is, I think, something the church sometimes gets wrong, is that, and it's grace that is, I needed forgiveness and I got forgiveness. All right? That's not wrong. That's right. But sometimes we see grace as being, that's all it is. But it's actually more than that. It's we didn't get what we deserved, but we also got what we didn't deserve, which was favour and goodness, not just you're back to zero. Right? So we're in the negatives, we're back to zero now, but now we're in the positives because of it. Alright, because of God's grace. And so there really is, I think grace, the great definition of it is that, well, let me just go back to, I just want to just talk a little bit about law for a second. So we talk about law, Old Testament law and stuff like that. We have all those things that we're meant to do. Who likes a checklist? Good checklist. Alright, we like a good checklist. We can tick it off. We look down the list. Look at all the things I've done today. Alright, give yourself a pat on the back at the end of the day when you've checked off those 5 things. Do you know what? I heard the psychology of making your bed. And I just heard this the other day. And I thought it's a good idea. Psychology of making your bed is that you can tick off, before you've done anything, you can actually tick off something in your box. Like, I have done something today. It's a good way to start your day. Alright, so there's a suggestion for you. Alright, nothing to do with our sermon. The message today, make your bed. Alright, Josh, you're not going to Sarah if you're listening. Make your bed. I'm just pointing at the camera over there, so because they listen to the podcast at night. Alright, so you like a good checklist, right? And the law was this checklist of things we needed to do. And if you do this, you've got to do that. And if you do this, you do that. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do that, right? Now, the Old Testament, right, has, we've got to work out, well, what don't we have to do anymore? What do we have to do anymore? What's changed? Okay, so sometimes we've got to kind of think about that in the New Testament. And see, even though we've got grace, it doesn't mean we can do whatever we want to do. Does that make sense? And so grace still is there for whenever we do the things that we're not meant to do, but we still get that grace. But it's not a license to sin. It's not a license to sin. In fact, Jesus he kind of ups it a bit. So Matthew chapter 5, he starts his beautiful message on the Sermon on the Mount, right? And he says, "You've heard it said, do not murder." And Jesus goes on to say, well, I'll tell you what, even if you're angry at your brother, it's kind of like the same thing. So you're basically a murderer. Right? He goes on, "You've heard it said, do not commit adultery." Alright, so most of us can go, yeah, cool, done that, it's fine, it's all good. But then it says, "But I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." And so there's a whole bunch of blokes that's like, it's not quite, I haven't necessarily done that one quite well all the time. Alright, so you can see that there's this thing, he talks about all these things, and Jesus actually says at the end of chapter 5, he says this, "Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect." Awesome. Alright, so he ups it, right? So there was the law of the Old Testament, don't murder and don't do all these things. But Jesus comes along and says, "I'm actually not here to change that. I'm actually here to fulfill that." There's a slight difference fulfilling it, but then I actually want you guys to be perfect. It's impossible, isn't it? It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. But Jesus is pointing out you need a saviour. So Jesus comes along, he fulfills the law, and then he dies on the cross, and then it's actually his blessing that we kind of get in there. But the thing is with the grace, he does step it up. But this is really interesting. The law requires us to do stuff to be accepted. Okay? If you don't do these things in the law, you cannot be accepted by God. That's the Old Testament law, right? But grace enables us to do the things that God's asked us to do. Rather than having a place where we're just told to do these things but we can't do it, grace is where he actually gives you the ability to do things that you wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And the grace is still there when we don't do it at the same time. And so, law requires, but grace enables, and the fulfillment of the law equals acceptance. But grace is this: because of Jesus and the cross, we're already accepted. So we're already accepted, but we've still got some stuff to do. Does that kind of make sense? So there's nothing you can do to get yourself into heaven. There's nothing you can do to get accepted by Christ. There's nothing you can do. The only thing you can do is surrender, which is like doing nothing, isn't it? Right? You cannot do anything to be accepted by Christ. But there's lots of things that He's actually asked us to do. Matthew 28 is one of the last things that Jesus said to His disciples. Does anyone remember what that is? Matthew 28, verse 18, 19. Go into the world and make disciples. Did He say go into the world and, if you feel like it, make disciples? He didn't give us a choice on that one, did He? Go into the world, make disciples, and then He said, and tell them and teach them to obey everything I've commanded them. John 13:34. We're praying about this morning. It's the commandment to love one another like Jesus had loved us. So before, the commandment was love each other like the way you want to be loved, but now it's love each other the way that I'm loving you. It steps up. And so there's a level of things that we still kind of have to do. There's still, even though there's grace, there's still stuff we need to do, right? But we do that. We do those things from a place of rest. We do those things from a place of we're accepted already. All right. So it's great news. It really is great news. It's really the exciting news because it's like I don't have to do a thing, but I get to do some stuff, and I get to do some really cool stuff. I get to teach people about the way to heaven. I get to teach people about the truth, about life, about love. I get to pray for people and see them miraculously get healed. That is so cool. That is so cool. I'll come to you in a sec, Jason, that's all right, mate. So that is so cool that we get to partner with him in that. And a lot of this stuff really, it kind of takes sacrifice. And it's interesting that Paul talks about sacrifice. And here's where if you've got Colossians up, we'll turn there now. Colossians chapter 1. You know, Jesus did it all. He did everything. And then he said, kind of keep doing the same thing as me, right? So in Colossians chapter 1, we see Paul writing to these guys in Colossae, and he says in verse 24, "Now I rejoice in what was suffered for you." So that's Paul suffering. "I rejoice in what was suffered for you, and I fill up my flesh what is still lacking in regard to Christ's affliction for the sake of my body." So he's saying, I'm still sacrificing. It's for the sake of the body, which is the church. "I have become its servant by the commission God gave me to present to you the word of God in its fullness. The mystery that has been kept hidden for ages and generations, but is now disclosed to the saints." That's us. So then God has chosen to make known among the Gentiles, that's us too, unless you're part of the Jewish nation, the glorious riches of this mystery, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. We proclaim him, admonishing and teaching everyone with all wisdom, so that we may present everyone perfect in Christ. And to this end I labour. Struggling. That doesn't sound like fun, does it? Thankfully I'm a guy, and never had to do labour. You know, I've heard it's not the easiest thing to do in the world. And but it says here, I labour, struggling. I have struggled, still struggle. I struggle. But it says this, and this is the really important and incredible part. This is what grace is. I labour, I struggle with, what does it say? All whose energy? Depends on what translation you got there. All his energy. Isn't that powerful? To think that it's you're working hard, but you're doing it in his strength. So every time you feel like, I can't do it, God, I need your strength, I can do it. Every time it's like, I really feel like, God, you want me to talk to that guy over there, but I don't want to talk to him, but I think you want me to talk to him and just pray for him or whatever. Like, you go, I can't do it today, I haven't got the strength to do it today. Maybe normally I could do that, but today I just don't have the strength because, my kids had a tantrum this morning, my wife, didn't like the way I handled my reaction to the tantrum. It's kind of true story sometimes. And so I'm not feeling like I want to talk to this guy right now, but I know, God, you want me to do it, so I cannot do it in my strength today, God, so give me some more of you. All right? Every time I think, hey, I'm just going to, maybe I'm going to give an extra $10 today, but I just can't. Well, I'm going to do it in his strength. Every time you think about, I just can't do it. Well, you can, because you can do it in his strength. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Paul's writing that from prison. We can do anything, guys. We can do anything. And he's actually asking us to do anything. He's saying, be perfect. Can't do that. Well, God help me to do it. You can't do it, right? But he can do it. He can do it in you. Struggling with all his energy, and that's the amazing thing. And so, and this is what sacrifice is. Sacrifice is getting up at 5 a.m. and praying for 2 hours. There's You know, there's that part where the disciples are praying for people and they're casting out demons left, right, and centre, and they do a whole bunch of good stuff. Do you remember that? You remember this story? And then Jesus comes down off this great mountaintop experience he has, and he comes down off this, and this guy meets him, and he says, "Your disciples tried to fix up my guy, my son. My son, he keeps, having the shakes, and every time this happens, sometimes he gets thrown into the fire and all this kind of stuff, and you know what? Your disciples couldn't do a thing." Jesus is like, "Oh man, come on. It's terrible. It's ridiculous." And then Jesus goes and just, kicks the demon out, and it's fantastic. Later on, the disciples ask him, "Why is it that we couldn't do it?" And Jesus says, "This type comes out by prayer and fasting only." And so here's the thing: we've been given all authority in Christ Jesus to do whatever we speak, and it happens, right? Like we have it's this bank account thing, but it doesn't always happen because sometimes we haven't actually accessed what it is in our bank account. And so it's kind of like going to Swansea markets and going to the guy who's selling the tomato plants and saying, "Hey, I'm here and I would love a tomato plant." And he says, "Well, they're $3, thanks." And you're like, "Cool, all right." And you tell him, "Well, I have a lot of money." He's like, "I don't care." He's like, "Show me the money." He's like, "I just want $3. And he said, "But mate, I've got $1 million in the bank account. And the bank's just down the road, look." And he's like, "I don't care, just give me $3. And so sometimes it's a little bit like that in faith. And so we have this access to unlimited resources, but sometimes we don't access it because we haven't done the things that God's asking us to do, like prayer and fasting. Like usually the demons can just go out to it because they say, "Get out." But this particular case, it didn't happen. They had to pray and fast. And so the thing is that sometimes we've got to go physically to the bank and say, "I would like some money, please." And they say, "Well, where's your card?" And they say, "Oh, I left it at home." They say, "Go away." All right? The ATM doesn't work when you just stare at it. Doesn't matter what you do. You have to put your card in the ATM, type in the numbers that are right, get out the money, and then you can go to the guy and say, "Here's my $3, I'll have a tomato plant." Does that kind of make sense? So sometimes we need to do that in the faith. And so it's about we need to sacrifice in order to see some of the stuff that God's already said He's going to do. And it's an incredible kind of thought to think that. But there's joy in that sacrifice. There's joy in giving up some stuff. There's joy in doing those things, and it's such a blessing. I was in a youth meeting a couple of years ago, and I was super tired because I'd been up all night because of the youth, as you would kind of imagine, right? So it was like this sleepover kind of youth camp thing that was going on. I was super tired, and I was sitting amongst all the people, and going into that kind of like I'm asleep but not sleeping kind of stage. And do you know that stage where you're like, I'm not asleep but I am asleep, or I'm in between, or something. And I'm there, and I'm just, because the worship was playing, is just incredible. I'm just like, I'm kind of soaking it up. I'm trying to be spiritual and soaking it up, but really I'm just falling asleep. But I'm enjoying my time there, and I'm there, and I see this vision. And so it's not a dream, but it's not a vision. It's sort of halfway in between. And it's this. It's my hand. It's my hand, and I'm pulling my. And it's a tarp, right? So I'm pulling a tarp. I'm pulling a tarp out, and I'm stretching it 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 out. That kind of makes sense. So this covering is getting bigger. And in my dream, I kind of knew and understood that was something to do with my influence and my ministry and things like that. And so as it's getting pulled out further and further apart like this, and I'm holding it in the corner, and there's the little hole kind of, in the tarps. You know those little holes in the corner where you put the tent pegs through and stuff like that? So it's there, I'm pulling out the tarp, and the hole is just about here on my hand. And all of a sudden, there's a massive tent peg, and there's a hammer that just goes whack, and my arm is in the ground. And I woke up. Because I wasn't expecting that. I was not expecting that at all. And then God spoke very clearly, and He said, the bigger you want to have your influence to be, the bigger is the sacrifice that you're going to have to do. And I went, wow, I've never forgotten it. Never forgotten it. And so this morning, I'm actually saying, the bigger the influence you want to have, there's going to be some sacrifice involved in it. But it's grace that enables you to do the sacrifice. Don't sacrifice in your own strength, that's just law. Don't sacrifice to get His approval. You've got His approval already. Sacrifice in His strength because of His grace. And you'll start to see some incredible stuff happening in your life and around you. And so revival really is about sacrifice. I love reading the stories about revival, and they start with beautiful grandmas praying in the basement for 5 hours a day. The Hebrides revival, Google that at some point in time, was started by 2 ladies in their 80s who prayed for 5 hours a day, and they did, and revival hit that place like it was incredible. And there's a link to it on the messages, on message notes on our page, on our web page. So go check that out. But it's incredible. Revival is not going to happen with us just saying God's done it all. He has done it all. Revival is not going to happen with us just saying He's done it all. I know it's a tension. I know it's like I'm saying the opposite thing. It's difficult, isn't it? Like to kind of get this idea. It's like those tensions that God loves to He loves doing it. He loves doing it. He's like, you've got free will, and everything has been preordained. How do you put those two together? I don't know, but God said it, so He can do it. And He's outside of our thinking, He's outside of our understanding, but He can do anything. All right, let's pray. God, thank You